Hey everybody, how's it going? All right, made this quick little video to show you a little bit more of the data that you all contributed to. Well, not you all, those of you who agreed, consented to allow us to use your data. And this was mostly back from the Indigenous Welcome activity when we had those various questionnaires. And so I want to share some of the data that we're seeing with you just to get you kind of involved and get you feeling like when it's your data, it's kind of cool, right? Plus it's all data around social anxiety and social interactions, and I think you'll find some of this interesting and potentially empowering. I also want to just use this. We're halfway through the term, and we're going to be talking about things like loneliness and social anxiety. So after I talk about the data a little bit, I'm also going to make you aware of some University of Toronto Scarborough resources that are available. If you're ever feeling in distress or that you need to reach out, you are part of our community, and we do have supports available. So we want to make sure you know that as well. Now that you're kind of getting into the real trickier part, challenging part of the term as we get near the end of the term. Okay, so let's go to the data first and go. Here we go. All right, so first of all, you'll see this is Adam. Adam has sort of scripted this for me. He's trying to help me out to present this, so he's kind of written it as a script a little bit. I'll just walk through this a little bit as we go through and highlight some things. So first of all, I don't know, can I make this a little bigger for you? A little bit bigger. We'll just do it this way. Is that too big? Let's see. No, that's probably good. Okay, and so let me just slide it a bit more this way. Okay, so here are the 5 measures that we're going to talk about. And again, as you've probably already gathered, what we're really interested in this term is your social well-being, what we call your social health. And as you've already seen from the Indigenous Welcome and other things you're going to learn about in the course, we're really trying hard to help incoming students get their social health right, to form some connections and to get all of the benefits that we know come from social health, including physical health and mental health. When you've got good friends, life is easier and you're happier. So let's look at some of the things. So what we did is we asked you guys to fill out a number of surveys, and these are all validated surveys. They're surveys that people have out in the literature to measure these constructs. And so the ones we measured are self-esteem, sort of how good do you feel about yourself? Sense of belonging, how much do you feel like you fit in the context where you are? Loneliness in general, we all know what loneliness is. Social anxiety, the extent to which you feel anxiety when you're faced with social interactions, especially face-to-face real-time interactions. And the so-called fear of negative evaluation, your sense that if you do engage in a social interaction with somebody, they're not going to like you. That by the end of it, it'll go badly. That's what we call the fear of negative evaluation. And so what we can do is we've measured all of you on all of these scales. And so we can look at correlations, right? We can start to say, are there relationships among these scales? And you can now do these sort of correlation matrices like this, which pits every scale against some other scale. So for example, this is self-esteem on the bottom here. So this is the correlation between self-esteem and belonging, self-esteem and loneliness, self-esteem and social anxiety, and self-esteem and fear of negative evaluation. Or we can go this way and say, well, how much does fear of negative evaluation correlate with these other things? And this is what I'm going to do with you, because I'm going to say right off the beginning, correlation does not imply causation. So we can't, based on a correlation, know exactly what's going on underneath. But of these measures, fear of negative evaluation is interesting because it sort of comes first, or at least there's a plausible causal story, right? That if you're afraid that other people won't like you if you talk to them, that might be why you become socially anxious, right? So it makes sense that the fear of negative evaluation would precede things like social anxiety, and that may make you feel lonely and like you can't fit, sort of thing. So it feels like fear of negative evaluation may be the most mechanistic variable we have for really understanding how things are going on, or what's going on. So I'm going to begin at least by going across this way and talking about fear of negative evaluation. And those of you, I've had a few of you students come to me afterwards and say, yeah, this is the thing that makes it hard for you to talk to other people in real time. You're not necessarily sure you're good at it. And you worry that if you try, it won't go well. That person won't like you. Maybe it's better not to try. That's the story. Now, first thing I want to tell you is, by the way, you're wrong. The research suggests that most of the time when you try, it turns out well. But that doesn't matter. The fear is still there, whether it's rational or not, right? So let's look at this. And let me just parse one of these here a little bit. Every one of these dots is a person in our sample. And so you see we have a lot of people. One of these dots, if you consented to allow us to use your research, one of these dots is you. But of course, it's anonymized. We're never going to highlight any given individual. We're just going to show the overall group like this. And what we see is a correlation of minus 0.53. Now these stars kind of tell us how reliable that is. It's the statistics, like do we think there's something really going on here? And you see right across the board we're seeing 3 stars, so stuff's going on, no doubt. With self-esteem, the notion here is this: the more fearful you are that things will go wrong when you talk to somebody else, the lower your self-esteem. Okay? Those who aren't very fearful, those who are very... every now and then you have to think of this. Yeah, okay. So those who are very fearful have a high self-esteem, but those that are less fearful have a high self-esteem. So this is what correlations can drive you crazy. And so I'm leaving this in the video so you can watch me go for a while as I try to think of it. This is high self-esteem, right? So the people who are high on the self-esteem, who feel pretty good about themselves, also tend to be low on the fear of negative evaluation, right? So they're scoring down here, whereas the ones that are high on fear of negative evaluation tend to be low on self-esteem. So we're getting a negative correlation. And so, that's impacting, potentially, we got to be careful with causal stories, but one potential possibility, becomes a theory, a hypothesis we could test, is that the more you fear these, the less you engage in those interactions, and that ultimately makes you feel not good about yourself. Okay, we see a similar story here with belonging, right? Although, look, by the way, this is more of a cluster, and you see here you got a nice linear. So that's why this is a 0.53 correlation, and this is only a 0.23. This is not nearly as clear as this one, but there is still this negative trend. It is still reliable, and what this says is that the higher somebody's fear of negative evaluation, the less they feel like they belong. That kind of sucks, right? We want people to feel like they belong. If we look at these measures now, we're seeing positive correlations, right? And what this is saying is the more you fear, the more you have this fear of negative evaluation, the lonelier you are. This is a positive correlation. The higher the fear, the higher the loneliness. And also, the higher the fear, the higher the anxiety. This is a very strong correlation in psychological work, 0.6. And this does suggest that social anxiety and fear of negative evaluation, really go like this. They are very related concepts. And so, to the extent that fear of negative, like what if you want to reduce social anxiety? Well, one notion is maybe you want to try to reduce the fear of negative evaluation. And we're going to tell you about Talk Lab in a while, which is all about that. Okay. Now, these aren't the only things in our data. There's a couple of other correlations that live here as well. And so we could look at these other ones, and we could just now quickly kind of walk through, all of them. We know this is self-esteem and belonging. So the more you feel like you belong, the higher your self-esteem. Positive correlation. That's not surprising. Okay, we're already, and this is loneliness. So now we're looking at self-esteem here, right? This is loneliness and self-esteem. The higher your self-esteem, the less lonely you are. The higher your self-esteem, the less anxious you are. And the higher your self-esteem, the less negative evaluation you feel. Self-esteem's good, right? It's making us feel better. Okay, and then we can go to this one, which is belonging, and we can look at that, and we can see, hey, if you don't feel like you belong, the lower your belonging, the higher your loneliness. people who don't feel like they belong somewhere are lonely. Not startling, but again, that implies that if we could make people feel more belonging, we could help them with their loneliness. Okay. The more you feel like you belong, the less anxiety you have, and the less fear of negative evaluation. So clearly, belonging is an important thing. We all need to feel like we belong to something. And then this is the final one we haven't talked about yet. This would be loneliness and social anxiety. We see a strong positive correlation here. So the more social anxiety somebody feels, the more lonely they tend to feel. Okay, so this social anxiety is getting in the way of your social connections, and that's leaving you feeling lonely. Okay, so a really rich data set here, and gives you a good example of scatter plots and correlations and how things can all kind of fit together. Cool. Okay, there's some discussion here of what's going on, but Adam then says what's most striking in his view is simply the distribution of responses on the loneliness scale. Only 1.4% of people reported no experiences of loneliness. That's over here. Most people are, this is a score that goes basically from 0 to 4. So most people are feeling, somewhere. This is sort of your normal distribution, by the way. Notice we measured something called loneliness, and we get mostly a normal distribution. That's what we commonly get. And we see a lot of people are in this 2 to 3, where they feel lonely either, sometimes or fairly often. Kind of thing. So it's very normal to feel lonely at least some of the time. And I want you all to think of that. In fact, Pete, who will be coming into class on Friday, would say that loneliness is like hunger. All of us are hungry sometimes. All of us are tired sometimes. All of us are thirsty sometimes. But when we're hungry, tired, or thirsty, we recognize that feeling is our body telling us it lacks something. And typically we're pretty good at going and getting it, right? So if we're hungry, we lack food, we go get some food. If we're thirsty, we lack water, we go get some water. If we're tired, we're lacking sleep, we go get some sleep. When you're lonely, you're lacking social connection. And in a perfect world, you would just go out and get some. You would just go out and make friends. Why don't you? Well, because there's a fear of negative evaluation that causes social anxiety, and it makes it so that you're scared of what you need the most: companionship, friends, and reaching out for social connection. You also see on the fear of negative evaluation scale, by the way, if you feel that fear of negative evaluation, again, very normal. In fact, we're not really seeing a normal distribution here, right? Sort of. But what you're seeing is it's sort of, the low end, there's some people, but not many. And there's a lot more on this high end of the fear of negative evaluation. They're kind of clustering in that side. So again, this is very common now. We get a high level of fear of negative evaluation and social anxiety. We get a roughly normal distribution here. But the average of this social anxiety score is very high. If you went to a therapist and your score was that average, they would say that's high enough for you to be getting treatment. So the average student in our class has a level of social anxiety that maybe deserves some form of treatment. That's a lot of social anxiety going on. So if you feel it, again, one thing to take from this, if you feel it, you are not alone. Your classmates are feeling it too. Okay. And belongingness, you can just see how belongingness, now we've got a nice normal distribution here, relatively a little high. That's kind of cool, the sense of social fit. But we would like to see it a lot higher. We would really like, we would like you all to be over here somewhere to really feel belonging. And then finally, self-esteem, just to look at some of these things, how self-esteem kind of breaks out. Again, we see a nice, clean, normal distribution here. This is a frequency histogram, right, that you're looking at. And you see a nice sort of spread of social esteem, right? So, the critical ones are, the critical point to take from all this is if you're lonely, you're not alone. Most of your peers are right there with you. But it also demonstrates the potential you have to contribute to the well-being of UTSC, of the student community. Since so many of us feel this way, and I don't know if this is me or Adam, but it's both. If it's Adam saying, heck, I feel lonely sometimes too. But I feel lonely sometimes too. We all do. And we all are the cure for each other. We just have to take a little risk every now and then and reach out to somebody. And give it a chance, because the benefits of social connection are so strong, as Pete will lay out in class tomorrow. Okay. These are just some suggestions from both Adam and I. These are things you could consider doing. Reach out to classmates or colleagues. I'll use Adam's words here. Why not? Be gentle, of course, and respect people's space. But if there's someone in the class whose life could be made better by you being at their side, why not give it a try? And again, just do it with tact. If you sense that person isn't interested, it's very easy to say, "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I don't know. I didn't mean to annoy you in any way. I was just trying to say hi, but if you're busy or if you'd rather not, no problem. If you ever would like to chat with me, I'm here." And they don't think any the worse of you for that, for trying to reach out and then respectfully back off if they don't seem interested. They're not going to think any bad. They're not going to think badly of you in any way. In fact, they're probably going to kick their butts for not taking you up on your invitation. And maybe they will in the future. Okay? Join clubs, teams, or study groups. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. Or activist initiatives. Shared interests and shared goals can build strong bonds. So yeah, find other people who are passionate about things you're passionate about and go hang out with them. You already got a point of common interest. It'll be easier to form those connections. Perform a small act of kindness. If you have an opportunity to make someone's day a little bit better, try taking it. Show a bit of care and camaraderie, maybe to someone who's not expecting it, and that can have a big impact. And seeing someone benefiting from your efforts can be a mood booster for you. In fact, that's one of the things that the research shows. Performing these small acts of kindness make you happier. They make the other people happier too, but they make you happier. Give it a try. Try it out. And importantly, take care of yourself. We can't all be social all the time, so self-respect and healthy boundaries are a very important part of the equation. So absolutely, right? All right. So, Adam's going to get a little darker here. Sometimes, though, things can get really tough. They can. They just can. We are social beings, but we sometimes feel judged socially, and it can be very difficult when we feel like others are not on our side, or worse yet, when they're against us. So it could be because of something that's happening to you, or because of a decision you make that didn't pan out as you hoped, or because of some combination of the two. Every now and then you can need help. You can need some support. And so just a few things. First of all, this is data that comes from the Genwell Initiative. This is the initiative that Pete Bombachi runs. And Adam does some analyses for them. They do a wide-scale survey of Canadians. And here they are on their social anxiety scale, but this time plotted as a function of age. And the point here is, you're over here. And this is where people feel the highest level of social anxiety. So right now, this point in your life is when that anxiety is the highest. And so one thing we want you to understand is, I think if you can trust this data, I'm going to come back to that, but if you can trust this data, the older you get, the less anxious you will become. Now, that's not exactly necessarily true. That's certainly a snapshot. If you look at different people at different ages, older people today are less anxious than younger people today. Does that mean the younger people today will have less anxiety when they're as old as the old people today? We're not sure. This anxiety that young people's feeling may be due to a lack of practice with social interactions. You've used text messages so much that face-to-face human interactions are harder for you than for older people who didn't have text messages when they grew up, had to do face-to-face interactions. And so what we may be seeing here is what's called a practice gradient, that over time, these people had more and more and more practice with social interactions, and as they get more practice, they feel less anxiety. And so where will you be when you're this age? Well, that'll depend on whether you can get on this practice train. Right? Can you start engaging with others and having those interactions? If you do, then you will be on this train. But if you don't, you could be right on up here. If you never get that practice and you're never comfortable in social interactions, you may always have social anxiety. So, interesting data, but also driving our thinking and our hypothesis testing. Okay. All right. So Adam says here, show slide with university resources. And so let me do that. Whoops. So we reached out to the UTSC Health and Wellness. We have some friends there, and we just let them know we're going to create this video. We're going to be talking about loneliness. We're going to be talking about social anxiety. And so if students are feeling any of this stuff, we would like to push them to some resources. And so I'm going to post these PowerPoint slides up because these are all hyperlinked resources. So I'm going to put these slides up so that you can go ahead and avail yourself of these resources if you'd like. I kind of have them broken up into a couple of things here. So the first one are these mental health services directly. And these range from the UTSC Health and Wellness Center, but also things like Good to Talk, the TELUS Health Student Support Line, etc. CAMH line there. So a variety of potential places you can go. If you need to chat with somebody, if you are really feeling, crushed by life, it can happen to some of us. It can happen to all of us some of the time. And so there you go. There's those resources. But let me also kind of highlight one of the other points we made. Community involvement, community engagement is a great way to get involved in things and get to meet others that are passionate about what you're passionate about. So volunteering, helping others is a really nice way to form relationships, and there's all sorts of organizations to do so, and they even get listed on your co-curricular record, so you can actually have your volunteer efforts, recognized, which is important to potential future employers and such, that to see that you're a caring kind of person. And so you can be caring for others, and you can be caring for yourself at the same time by joining a community, and that community will give you the social connection. Okay, so as far as your student experience stuff, here's this other department, this Department of Student Experience, which you could connect with as well, and they can give you suggestions about other things you could be thinking about doing in terms of community engagement in a variety of ways. And then finally here, there's peer support. There's a peer support program. It says it's on hold for this year, but she's provided an alternative group at Health and Wellness, a different way to experience peer support. So peer support means it's students helping you. Students often who have been in a very similar situation as you, so they understand, they care, and they want to help. And so something to check there. But then finally, things like student organizations or sports clubs, whatever. The university has all sorts of these clubs. If you're the kind of person that says, man, I wish I had more friends, but I'm just not comfortable talking to other people, join a club. Learn with other people. You're already doing it in my class, right? You're sitting there learning with other people. Why not go learn karate or go learn dancing, or there's so many clubs available, and you can just show up there to learn the skill, but you're going to be learning with others, and invariably you'll start talking to those other people about what you're learning, and you'll form a community, and that will give you some social health. Okay, so want to encourage you on that front as well. All right, got an itchy eye for some reason. Oh, what's going on? Right. So yes, we want to let you know, Adam and I, that the university cares about how you're doing. So here's some other stuff here. We're not going to actually show, this was stuff Adam and I created, but then when we reached out to Health and Wellness, they gave us the list I just showed you. Let's stick with their list. So let's just sort of stop here. But other than saying, we care. And the reason we're doing this research is because we care. You are really the first cohort. Well, let me say it this way. Last year, I measured the social anxiety of the students in my class, and I understood just how anxious you are. And I understand also how much that can get in the way of your social health. That is what is prompting us to bring in all these initiatives that you're going to hear about and that you have. The Indigenous Welcome Talk Lab that you'll hear about in a little bit, and at least one of the experiential learning projects that we'll do at the end. They're all focused on social health, teaching you the importance of social health, and in the case of Talk Lab, making you feel more comfortable having face-to-face interactions. That's still to come. That's a teaser for you for now. But we were motivated to do all of these things because we want to do a better job at UTSC, welcoming you to UTSC, and hopefully helping you find belonging, helping you feel like a real member of our community. And that's what a lot of this research is now focused on, learning how to do that better. We very much appreciate all of you who have allowed us to use your data. It is helping us make UTSC a kinder, gentler place for every year of students that comes in. So thank you. Thank you with all that. If you have any questions about any of this stuff, bring them to office hours on Thursdays at 4 p.m. It would be great to chat with you about any of this during that time. Okay, that's it.